Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to welcome you at today's 8th year international conference on the topic that is of interest of all of us, and that is insolvency. I'd like to remind you that this year we have decided to call the conference Insolvency of 2017, and with the subtitle, which is also important for us, Insolvency in the Central European Space, selected topics. It's quite clear that we cannot cover all the issues relating to insolvency. As the name suggests, I'd like to say that this time it is not the extension of the topic in terms of the contents, but in terms of geography, because if you remember the past years, we talked about insolvency proceedings, Insolvency Act, especially in the Czech Republic, but this year we will focus on the Central European area. And looking back to the past conferences which I participated in, just like in many other events with a group of colleagues who are organizing this conference today, I have to say that I can see a big difference. 8 years ago, the issue of insolvency proceedings was more about the businesses in crisis, reorganization, restructuring, and other issues that were quite marginal topics in the Czech Republic. I think you remember it quite well. But today, these are issues that are the main topics of research of today, in my opinion, justly so. I'd like to say that I am really honored that I could contribute to this topic, and that whenever I come back to the University of Economics, I can see the growing interests of students in these issues. If I remember well, 8 years ago, our key speaker at this conference was Mr. Dimitrios Tsomokos, professor of Oxford University today, who I'd like to warmly welcome here. In the meantime, he has become the professor at Oxford University. I think this is a great achievement. I'm really honored to welcome also Mr. Rene Pollak, who will be here during the ceremonial opening when the Center for Restructuring and Insolvency will be changed to the Harry Pollak Center for Restructuring and Insolvency. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all the introduction on my part, and now allow me to ask the Vice-chancellor for International Relationships and Information Science, Dr. Jiří Hnilica, who is also the head of the Department of Strategy. Thank you for your attention. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants of the conference. At our faculty, apart from departments, we also have centers whose purpose is to connect not only the departments within the faculty, but also to integrate practice into the theory and research based on specific areas. One of the centers is also the Center for Restructuring and Insolvency, and I am really happy that starting from today, this center will bear the name of an important crisis manager, Mr. Jiří Pollak. He restructured big and small businesses at a time when no one heard about turnaround management, and management as such was not a scientific discipline. However, both management and turnaround management came into existence in the post-war period when Europe was constituted as a modern economic superpower, and also the modern industry came into industry, and the methods how to manage it. I'm really pleased that we have the son of Jiří Pollak, Mr. Rene Pollak, who will present us the activities of his father in a little while. Crisis and looking for a new past belongs to the businesses and their management, and therefore we have the centers which analyzed and study the crisis and look for proper methods how to deal with them, whether to continue with the activity of the business or whether to terminate the activities and to use the assets otherwise in a better way, if possible. If it is quite easy to find, if we are able to find these ways how to solve the situation, it is beneficial not only for the owners of the businesses, but also for the whole society. So it is important from the macroeconomic perspective, and we will hear about that from Professor Dimitris Tsomakos. So thank you for your attention. Welcome at the premises of the University of Economics, and I believe that this conference will help us to understand better how to deal with the crisis of businesses, of undertakings. I would also like to congratulate on the change of the name of the Center for Restructuring and Insolvency to the Jiří Pollak Center for Restructuring and Insolvency, which will deal not only with the crisis of businesses, but follow on the tradition of this field. And one of the important representatives of this field is Jiří Pollak. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the University of Economics in Prague. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to express my thanks to Mr. Hnilica for his introductory words and also for saying a few words about our today's conference held in the occasion of the 8th year of this conference, topic of which is insolvency. Now I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Rene Pollak, who is the son of Jiří Pollak. He will participate in this ceremony of changing the name of Center for Restructuring and Insolvency. Ladies and gentlemen, before I invite Mr. Rene Pollak to the stage, to the ceremonial act, allow me to say a few words about Jiří Pollak. I should say that I had a great opportunity to meet him personally many times, and I was also present when he, at the premises of University of Economics, was granted the Ph.D. title. Might not be a surprise for you that this school awards this title, but it's important to say that Mr. Jiří Pollak, after having successfully completed his studies, was 80, and he had a fascinating career behind him. I'd like to remind a few moments from his life. He worked for many undertakings. He participated in restructuring and rescue of these undertakings and recovery as well. I'd like to mention just three names. It is a Dunlop Company, Aston Martin, and Krupp. You definitely know these names, and we know how important their role in the economy is. I'd like to say that Mr. Jiří Pollak worked for restructuring department of big banks and also back investment groups. He also led a very interesting life, and he experienced very difficult moments. He was in the concentration camp. He fled away from France to Great Britain, and he also was part of the Czechoslovak army. He was active at Dunk, and then in 1949 he had to leave the country because of the communist regime. Then he completed a PhD program, a 3-year PhD program, and he was awarded the PhD title at this university. At that time, a lot of people in the room might have been surprised, but for me this was one of the most touching moments in my life. But before I hand over to Mr. Rene Pollak, I'd like to read one idea of his father, which is not about economy or economics, but it's great. I'd like to say, before doing so, to remind that Mr. Jiří Pollak published also a publication in Mladá Fronta publishing house. I have a copy here, so if you'd like to have a look, you can come here and read the most important moments from the life of Mr. Jiří Pollak. And now that short paragraph, which I think it's great. It might be an inspiration for all of us for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to think, be worried. We are either poor or rich. If we are rich, we don't have to worry. If you are poor, you have only two problems. You are either poor and healthy, or either poor and ill. If you are healthy, you don't have to worry. If you are ill, the point is whether you survive or not. If you survive, then you don't have to worry. If you don't have only one question, you will either go to the heaven or to the hell. If you go to the heaven, everything is all right. If you end up in the hell, and it is not the reason for being worried, because all your friends are expecting you there. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite Mr. Rene Pollak to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. And all I'm going to do is to add a little bit of detail to it. I've been asked to say a few words about my dad, so that's what I'm going to do. Harry Pollak was born in 1926 into a farming family in Semcin. Through hard work and diversification, they had been successful despite the heavy and cold soils they have there and the short growing seasons. However, in the years of land reformation and the Depression, they, like so many others, fell onto hard times. My grandmother, as I was told, was obliged to go and sell homemade textiles from house to house, whilst my grandfather did whatever menial jobs were available at the time to add a little bit of money to the kitty. However, they survived. In the 30s, the rise of German nationalism saw my dad sent to France by his parents. His Jewish parents were concerned for his future, and whilst he survived and prospered, they did not. He must have been a remarkable young man. He recollected how harsh the conditions were in the boarding school to which he'd been sent. Despite this, he learned French from scratch in months, and he and another Czech boy in the same position became the school's prize scholars. Does that say something about the Czech psyche and intellect? Sure it does. At the start of the war, he was desperate to join the fight for democratic freedom, and he left France and after an arduous journey joined the Allied forces in England. He learned yet another language, again in double quick time. And after many years in the tank regiment, at the end of the war, he returned to the Czech Republic, fully expecting to pick up his life again as best as he could. He enrolled to study engineering here in Prague, and at the same time, he attempted to restore the ruined family farm to working condition. At the end of his 3 years, despite having successfully completed his studies in Prague, his Czech degree was denied him. He told me that this was because his political views were counter to those which prevailed at the time. Under financial and political duress, with threats to his livelihood and with his farm confiscated, belatedly he and my mum sadly decided to run away from the Czech Republic. My mum was a young salesgirl in the glass department of Bílá labuť and was probably more used to tottering around elegantly on high-heeled shoes than to running around with a suitcase in hand through dark woods, up and down hills, and across fields at midnight to get out of the country. She used to tell me harrowing tales of this experience. It is an irony of war that they were eventually given sanctuary in Germany, a nation who my dad had been fighting just a few years previously. My father moved to the UK in 1949. His incredible intellectual capabilities propelled him through a range of engineering-based jobs in the 50s and the 60s. He's now most remembered for a skill set he acquired around 1960, value analysis. He developed this process and applied it to ailing companies. At a time when mathematics were undertaken with slide rules, logarithmic tables, and long before the widespread use of computers, he would deconstruct industrial and commercial processes, strip out lower value elements, and reconstruct systems in more efficient ways, all, as I remember, on little bits of graph paper. Through this process, it appears he significantly reduced cost and markedly increased effectiveness. He was talented at making esoteric connections between what were often uncorrelated fundamentals in highly creative ways. Using these techniques, he worked for many well-known companies, as we've already heard: the steel manufacturer Krupp, the rubber company Dunlop, and the electronics firm IBM. Smaller companies included investment banks such as Keyser Ullman, the famous car manufacturer Aston Martin, and finally the paper company Thomas & Green, where he was based in Switzerland. He created a trail of success achieved against a background of high moral principles. Honesty, focus, hard work, and integrity, as I recollect, defined the man. However, business and principles often sit uncomfortably together. His rectitude, decency, and principled position often appeared to leave his clients delighted at the commercial gains, but sadly less so with their relationship with Harry. He could be a dogmatic man. He was often saved from social disaster by his consistently charming and emotionally intelligent wife. Then, after half a lifetime of helping ailing companies survive and thrive, he turned to another lifetime's aspiration: success in the academic arena. He obtained his Ph.D., as we've heard, through the good offices of this university when he was in his 80s. Subsequently, he returned here regularly to give, what I'm told, were very enlightened, erudite, and practical lectures to your students. This was his way of giving back, not just to the students and the university in particular, but to his beloved Czech Republic in general. It was a reflection of his gratitude at having been accepted back to Prague, this after having been rejected more than half a century before. What I hope I've made clear was my dad's exceptional intellectual gifts and dedication to hard work. These were applied throughout his whole life in the endeavor to make a beneficial difference to industry. Indeed, he died working at his computer at the age of 91. And at that time, he was writing yet another presentation for students at this university. Within weeks, he was fully expected to make his customary journey from home in Switzerland to Prague to give that lecture. Sadly, it never happened. As you can see, I believe your recognition of this astounding man's enterprise by the University of Prague are fully justified. He's a noteworthy individual with whose name your illustrious establishment can be proud to be associated. He is a unique alumni of the economics department and has made a special contribution in helping to place what I perceive as wise heads on young shoulders. On his behalf, I thank you for honoring my dad and by naming the department after him. I'm sure that if he's looking down on us now, he'd be beaming with pride. Thank you for the tribute that you bestow on him. I'd personally like to thank the Dean and the team from within and outside the university. Their hard work and the commitment that they've shown have all proved pivotal to making this name change possible. And finally, I'm most grateful to you all for having given me the time to make this presentation to you today. I wish you every success for the future under the aegis of the new name, the Harry Pollak Center for Reconstruction and Insolvency. Thank you very, very much.